Good afternoon. Yes, you are listening to the RELO's Andy's webinar for April 2018. We are coming to you live. I'm Rob O'Leary, and I'm sitting here with
Lisa Wakefield.
Yes, and we are deep in the heart of the United States Embassy in Lima, and we have a very special guest today who actually is a fellow in Colombia, 18th speaker, Talibah Sun.
Hello, my name is Talibah, and today we are going to be talking about the communicative approach. I'm with the U.S. Department of State. I am an English fellow. So we're going to talk today about implementing the communicative approach to improve student communication skills and competency. As I said, my name is Talibah. I'm an ELF. ELF stands for English Language Fellow. I don't look like an ELF, but I'm an ELF. I have 40 years of experience in education. I've been in education since 1977. I have a master's in education from urban and multicultural education from New Jersey City University, where I specialize in TEFL, teaching English as a foreign language. I also have a master's of education and policy studies from California State University, Sacramento. I completed postgraduate work in International and Transcultural Studies at Teachers College, Columbia University in New York. I have visited 20 countries. I had a baby in one. I taught English in 7 countries: Belize, Jamaica, Costa Rica, Nicaragua, Panama, Colombia, and of course, the United States. I also assist international students who want to take the TOEFL IBT exam to enter university and colleges in the States. So I have one question for everyone. Those of you who are registered, I'd like for you to choose which role best describes your work. Are you a private school English teacher? If so, mark A. Public school English teacher? Mark B. University English professor? Mark C. If you're an English student or any other description, please mark D. Okay, I'm going to move on. So the communicative approach, there are 2 acronyms that we most know this method by. Communicative Approach Teaching and Training is CAT, and the Communicative Language Teaching is CLT, just for your information. So today we're going to talk about the 5 W's of communicative approach: who, what, where, when, and why. Why should we use the communicative approach in the English learning classroom? So my first question is, what is the purpose of learning a language? Everyone wants to learn a language to communicate, mostly to communicate with other English speakers. That's called function, notion, and basically utility of the English language. Why are you learning English? Now, many people will say they're learning English to get a job, or to get into a university, or it's required by their country for some promotions. But the communicative approach assumes that everyone is learning English so you can speak, so that you can communicate, especially or probably with native English speakers. So the communicative approach offers a natural, authentic way of teaching the English language. So the communicative language teaching approach assumes that for communication, we need to know both the language itself and how to use it. The communicative approach goes beyond the English workbook in the classroom. It encourages students to use the English language and not just study and decode and translate the English language. Learners best learn language when they are actively using it. So therefore, the communicative approach says you must be speaking in English at all times, at at least in the classroom. If you're not speaking English, your communicative skills are low. Learners benefit most from activities that provide meaningful conversation. Again, going back to the purpose of learning a language is to communicate, not to fill in the blanks, not ABC, 1, 2, 3, true or false, not gap fills, but to be able to talk and communicate with other English speakers. Learners benefit most from activities that provide meaningful communication. What I will show you today is how to use the English language, not just how to study the English language, how to speak confidently with other English learners. And for teachers, it's important that teachers focus on, well, there's 4 domains we all know: reading, writing, speaking, and listening. The communicative approach says that speaking is the most important domain and all others follow. Learners are able to use the language in unrehearsed context to accomplish communication goals in real life. When we say unrehearsed context, I like to say outside of the workbook, or no memorization of conversations and dialogue. The communicative approach means you create as students. And so it's the teacher's responsibility to give comprehensible input, enough information so the students can react and respond in English orally. The communicative approach is based on communication. That is the what of the communicative approach. So CLT, or communicative language training, focuses on the function, the purpose of learning any language, in this case, English. The purpose of language. What do you need to do? I'm a Spanish language learner. What do I need to do right now? I need to take a taxi. I need to order in a restaurant. I need to argue with someone who is charging me too much money. I need directions to how to get from one place to another. I need to talk to my colleagues in Spanish. There is a reason why I'm learning English, and that is called function. English, or any language, the learning of language is to learn the purpose. Why do we communicate? Many people say they want to travel. In the airport, in any country that you go to, English is used. So therefore, having English communicative skills will help you to function every day in real life applications. Learning any language increases your competency, but the communicative approach increases your competency to speak. What is different from the communicative approach and other approaches such as grammar, the grammar translation, is the communicative approach is focused on the student. The student has to be an active participant, actively engaged in their own learning. The communicative approach uses real life purpose and applications. Why are you learning language? To be able to do things in reality. For example, I love to use this example. Many people, when I show up, they want to ask me questions. And one of the first questions they ask me is, what is your favorite color? And I ask them, what page in the workbook are you on? Because we do not ask each other, what is our favorite color? That's not how we speak. Or what is the traditional food in your country? Well, there is no traditional food in the United States because the United States is a country of immigrants and ex-slaves. So therefore, the questions that you use in the workbook more often than not are not connected to real life situations you will find yourself in the English culture. So the communicative approach encourages real life application purpose of why you will use the language. So I please caution everyone, when you meet a Native American speaker, please do not ask them what is their favorite color, okay? So you use your personal experiences, you share your personal experiences, you share your culture, you learn about other people's culture through English. That's what the communicative approach is focused on. Communicative activities in the classroom. These are part of classroom instructional strategies. Includes games, drama, storytelling, student-created dialogues, poetry, speeches, debates, cartoons and comic strips, public speaking, songs. One of the best activities that I'm known for is teaching hip hop culture. We sing Beyonce, Jay-Z, Rihanna, Ed Sheeran, and teachers are shocked that the students know the lyrics of many of the popular American songs. That is learning English. To be able to sing a song and sing the lyrics, that is English. And so songs and singing karaoke is another way of learning English. It's not typical class work in the workbook activities. These are outside. These require creativity on the part of the teacher. Orally giving descriptions, unrehearsed presentations. And I want to emphasize unrehearsed. It means the students create the dialogues. Students create the dialogue. So teachers must trust students, that students are able to create dialogues based on their needs or based on the topic. Communicative approach requires that students work together in pairs, in small groups, and present to large groups. I'm going to show you a video.
Again, right? What do you want? Do you have? Please look for words like I, let's go. Thank you.
Hey, Talibah, if you can hear us, the video is not understandable, so we need to stop it.
Okay, I'm sorry, it seems like the video that I wanted to share is the audio is not, you can't hear it. So I'm going to go ahead and move on. But basically what the video is, and you can look on YouTube, okay. Basically what you see is the student-teacher reaction, the student-teacher relationship. Most oftentimes the teacher is always standing at the front of the classroom and is lecturing for a long time. But in the communicative approach, students and teachers are interacting together. In fact, in a true communicative classroom, the teacher talks very little and students talk the most in the target language, and in this case, English. So therefore, in the communicative approach, we have what's called teacher talk time and student talk time. Unfortunately, many students are what we call passive learners. You're just accepting and receiving the information, you're writing it down, and you're not producing and creating language. And then there's a test. And then you do it again for another class. You're receiving information. The teacher is talking. And then you write it. And then you take a test. But then when someone such as myself come to you and say, hi, how are you? You get this blank look like, uh-oh. And you may have gone through A1, A2, and maybe in B1, but you do not have the confidence to speak English because basically the teacher has done all that for you. And in the communicative approach, we're saying the teacher talk time is down and the student talk time is up. So question number 2, according to the communicative approach, the ideal ratio between teacher talk time and student talk time is, what do you feel is the ideal ratio between teacher?
And there's your results. There's your results. Can you see your results on the screen based on your poll? The number one result was 80% student talk time to 20% teacher talk time. 71% of your audience voted on that.
Ding, 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 ding. Wonderful. That is the ideal ratio, that the students talk the majority of the class. So for example, if you have an hour-and-a-half class, that means for an hour, the students are talking. For half an hour, the teacher has given what's called comprehensible input, given information, and the students respond in a variety of ways. And you are correct, 80% to 20%. Now, some people will say, well, that's hard to do with little kids. It's not really. If we had able to see the video, you would have seen these are 5, 6, and 7-year-olds. What is difficult and what is time consuming is creating activities that encourage students to talk. And that's one of the criticisms of the communicative approach, is that it requires a lot of creativity on the teacher's part to create lesson plans where the students are talking the most. It also requires a change in values and beliefs about the teacher's role. Many teachers feel that it is their role to stand in front of the class and talk, and the students just respond by giving a test. Or in many countries, especially in Latin American countries, you still use grammar translation. You're constantly translating. If you translate, you are not developing the left side of your brain. You're staying in your right side, which is your first language. Your second language is in your left side. If you're using your right side to learn your left side brain muscle remains weak. You have to be forced to use the left side of your brain to use English. Communicative approach also says that it is best to always stay in the target language, and the teacher should not use, in this case, Spanish in the classroom, possibly at the beginning, A1, especially for young learners, but by the time that students progress from A1 to A2, B1, the target language in the classroom should be only English, no más, no other language. And that's difficult in TEFL classes because the teachers and the students share the same language. So I'm in Colombia. The teacher speaks Spanish, the students speak Spanish, and they tend to go to their dominant mother tongue. But in an English classroom, you should stay in the second language or third or fourth, depending on how many languages you have. You need to develop that muscle and not depend on your first language to inform your second language. You should stay in the second language. So congratulations to those who had that correct. That is really good. Okay, so who is the communicative approach for? For whom? It's based on the students. Student-centered, student talk time. The teacher is the facilitator, not the lecturer, not the preacher, not the one who has all the information, is holding the information, but the teacher facilitates the learning of the student. Teacher talk time is lower, student talk time is high. I had 2 videos, but it seems like the videos are not working, so we are going to skip. So here are some photos of what a communicative classroom looks like. If you see it, the teacher is not standing at the front of the class, and students are sitting at their desk taking notes. The students are engaged in the activities, whatever activities they are, whether they're doing dialogue or poetry, or they're talking to each other, sharing information about themselves. You see that this is a different dynamic, different relationship between the teacher and the student. And unfortunately, in many traditional cultures, the role of the teacher, you have to rethink, as we call a paradigm shift. You have to rethink what the teacher is. And the teacher is the one who gives you information for you to act upon it. And in this case, to use it to communicate. So in the English language classroom, it's either ESL or TEFL. The communicative approach is often used as an enrichment activity. It supplements and supplant English workbooks. You use communicative approach inside and outside in the environment. And the communicative approach immerses you in culture. Let me talk about that. Many English language learners do not realize that English and any language is not just a language, it's a culture. There's a difference between ESL and TEFL. ESL, English as a second language, only happens in English-speaking countries. I'm SL right now because I live in a Spanish-speaking country. So all around me, everything is Spanish. Radio stations are Spanish, TV is Spanish, everything I read, newspapers, restaurant menus, everything is in Spanish. So United States, and I speak of the United States, is a country of immigrants where they are immersed in English culture. They are surrounded by English culture every day. The classroom is the environment. It's not a separate place. Whereas in TEFL, the classroom is separated from your major culture. And so it is the teacher's role to immerse you in English culture in the classroom. So when we're talking about newspapers and restaurant menus and directions, these things are called realia. They should be in the classroom. You should be exposed at all times from the moment you walk into the English language classroom in the English culture. There are 70 English cultures because there's 70 different English speaking countries. So TEFL is very difficult because you have to create the experiences. So imagine how different learning English is in the United States and how different it is learning it outside of the United States. When you learn English outside of the United States, that's TEFL, learning English as a foreign language. It's no different than learning algebra or learning any other sciences. It's separate from your everyday life. Whereas the communicative approach is saying English needs to become part of your everyday life if you want to progress in English, if you want to be able to communicate. So that's the where and the when. The why. Why should we use communicative approach? Why should we change what we're already doing in the classroom? Kids are progressing, they're doing well, or maybe not on the exams. Fine, if they're doing well on the exams, but can they speak? Are the exams testing, assessing a student's English language proficiency? And so therefore you have to keep that in mind. But the advantages of the communicative approach is that it's student-centered, it's focused on the student, not the teacher. It improves student engagement because students are involved in what they're doing because mostly they create the experience. It builds confidence. When students are able to communicate, you don't see the presence of affective filter. That's when everyone shuts down, they're afraid to talk. And I get it all the time whenever I show up and no one knows if I'm an American until I open my mouth. If I'm speaking English or Spanish, they can hear the accent. And literally people freeze, people who have been up to B2. When I say hi, then you get this deer in headlights kind of look. It's like, oh my God. I actually have to talk. And then I'll say, ask me a question. And what's the question they ask me? What's your favorite color? I'm like, why do you want to know my favorite color? Don't you want to know something about my family, where I'm from? What do I do? Why am I here? Or even if you're in my country, do you want to know how to get to, oh my God, I want to go to Times Square. And do what? So English has a real purpose to it. It has a real application. Why do you want to learn English? And I hope most people say not to, to get a job. Because this whole concept of globalization, I changed that to be world citizen. You want to learn any language so that you can move about the world and do whatever you want to do. Okay? The purpose to learn English is not to take a test. The purpose to learn English is to communicate. So in a TEFL classroom using communicative approach, there's more of exposure to the target language. One of the controversies is the teacher uses the mother tongue that the teacher shares with the students. And that's an impediment. because again, you do not develop your left side of your brain. In the communicative approach, you use real English resources, which I will share with you. And in the communicative approach, it provides opportunities to use culturally relevant and specific materials. For instance, I like to do storytelling. And one of the examples I did in a teacher training was La Llorona. I did it with Rob, who's on this website. Unfortunately,
one question that's been asked a few times is, how do you have them communicate when they're not really understanding anything you're saying in English? So that's 2 or 3 people have asked that question. What do we do if the students do not understand what we are saying during the class? So if you could address that, that would be great.
Okay, so I'm assuming the students are either very young or they're beginning.
Right.
The thing is everything has to be age appropriate. So you will use more TPR, or total physical response, body language, body gestures, photos, a lot of audio visuals, pointing to, and start very simply. For instance, this is a cat, and you have a picture of a cat. What is this, student? This is a cat, and the picture of the cat is there. So if you have students that you know don't understand English, you have to modify your teaching to meet the needs of the student. And that's the point. It doesn't matter what level your students are. And what determines is how you teach them. Think about this. How did you or your children, if you have children, or any young child, learn language? How did children learn language? They didn't have a workbook. And by the time they're 5 years old, they're speaking in complete sentences and they can describe things. You need to know, one needs to know the theory of how languages are learned. Languages are learned through experience, modeling, chunking, breaking things down into small pieces, and you progress with the development. You need to also know about developmental age and developmental learning and different learning modalities. So that question itself is it's a graduate class in TEFL. But basically the teacher has to adjust to the needs, and you have to do an assessment of the needs, the background and experience of your students, and gear your lesson plans to the student. That's one thing about workbooks. Workbooks don't know your students. They don't know you, they don't know your students, they don't know your culture. They're going on a standardized way of teaching English, which doesn't fit everyone. Was there another question?
Hernandez Santiago, and she is asking, how can a teacher teach her students how to speak English 80% if her level or his level is very low as it is? So if you're a low-level teacher, how can you get your students to speak at 80%?
Well, it sounds like the teacher and the student needs to learn together. So I would say create opportunities that it's collaborative. That's a challenge that many English teachers themselves do not have a high level of proficiency. And so I assume those teachers are not placed with students who have high level of proficiency. I assume that such teachers are placed with students who are lower level. And so you use that. The thing is you have to know not only the student's background and experience, but your own. And,
yes.
And you probably have to do there's a lot of resources I want to share with you that will help to improve your English and your students' English. So I think the teacher has to be realistic about what they can and cannot do and adapt their lessons that they feel comfortable with that also meets the needs and the age appropriateness of their students.
Okay, excellent.
Well, in many countries. Okay, so there's one more thing I wanted to bring to this slide. It's authentic, culturally relevant and specific materials. Every country, every culture has stories, has dramas, have plays, skits, poetry. And much of that is already translated in English. Rob, you and I did in Mexico, we did La Llorona. And I did it in Colombia. And they were shocked, the teachers were shocked that La Llorona has been translated in many languages, including English. that the songs La Llorona has been translated into English. So you can use La Llorona, a legend that many people in Latin America are aware of. You can use it to teach. When I was working with Access students and College Horizon students, I used Botero. I'm in Colombia. Botero is a #1 artist from Colombia. I taught the art of Botero in English. So you look at a picture of Botero and you can label and describe what you're seeing depending on the level. So use what is available, because unfortunately, many people think if you learn English, you lose your culture. No, if you learn English, French, or any language, you are enhancing your own culture. And many people don't realize that. So I'm really big on making sure that the engagement of student means also engaging them in activities that are close to home. And practically everything is in English. So there's really no excuse not to use English literature. Okay. You have a lot of resources available to you. Now, one of the things I complain about, I'm 64 years old. I started teaching 40 years ago. When I started teaching, there was no internet. We had to literally draw the templates for lesson plan. We had to have a ruler and a pencil. And now I sound like, you know, my grandmother or something saying, back in the day, I used to walk up against the snow in 30 degrees weather. And so I really kind of don't have much patience with teachers who say, well, I don't know where to get my information. All you have to do is Google it. Everything is online. Now, because I work for the U.S. State Department, I'm a contractor with the English Language Fellow Program. We're going to take a commercial break now, and I'm going to tell you the internet resources that teachers have available to you. Unfortunately, I'm not going to be able to go to the slides that I have open, but you have before you americanenglish.state.gov. And so again, back to the teachers and their low proficiency, there are many internet resources that you can increase your own English proficiency. My thing is, if you don't mind me saying so, my whole thing is, and I think you understand my prejudice, stop being so dependent on workbooks to learn a language. When you have such a rich array, plethora of resources available on the internet. AmericanEnglish.state.gov is actually, you could say, the people that I work for. And unfortunately, I can't go into the internet site that I want to do, but what you could do is when you go into that site, put a search for games. There are all kinds of examples of how to teach English using games. Going back to talking about children, we have games such as Candyland that teaches colors. On this site, teachers have game boards that they create their own lessons as a game. And it's on the americanenglish.state.gov. And you see you go into games on that website and you Google activate. And I don't know if you can see that, but you can activate games. And again, it takes a lot of creativity. Warning, warning, warning. Communicative approach means a lot of teacher preparation and teacher plan. But believe me, once you get a hang of it and you implement it in the classroom, it also requires less work of the teacher in the classroom. So you may say, oh my goodness, I'm going to spend a couple of hours creating a game. Yes, you will. But you're not going to spend any time in the classroom once you give the kids a game. You'll be able to just walk around and see what they're doing.
So I think that brings up a good point, Talibah. It's just, you know, you do your prep time and it's not what you're doing in your free time at home. It's how it benefits the students and ultimately you as a teacher, giving them time to communicate in the classroom.
Yes, that's exactly right. It really honestly changes a lot for a lot of people, the role of the teacher. And it does require a lot of planning, but it's so pleasurable. I could say for myself, when you see students engage, you spend that time in creating lessons or just focusing on the target language and giving them ideas of activities to do, and to sit back and watch students create, to me, I think it's one of the most pleasurable things about teaching. Okay, so back to this website, americanenglish.state.gov, use songs. Oh my goodness, as soon as I show up, everybody thinks I know Beyonce. I don't know Beyonce, but I will use her song, Who Run the World? Girls, girls, who run the world? And Shine Bright Like a Diamond, and a lot of popular songs. On this website, there's a lot of songs for children. So again, you talk about the English level of the children and the English level of the teacher. Teacher, learn the song. Learn the songs. You can't teach what you don't know. So that also requires the teacher to be prepared and in preparing lessons that are relevant and a positive experience for everyone. There's drama and plays on this same website. Again, there's so much you don't have to create because it's already there. All you have to do is go on the internet. So again, on americanenglish.state.gov, all you do is Google dramas and plays. And once students get comfortable with dramas and plays, watch them create their own based on a real life situation. Storytelling, drama, and plays, there's lots of culturally relevant plays in everyone's culture that can be translated into English. And I don't mean literal translation. I mean by the meaning and the context. So use what you already know, start there. And drama process, Rob, you could talk to us more about that, about pantomiming and creating characters. For advanced students, especially those who want to go to states and go to school in the States, you really need to become comfortable with Voice of America. If you want to advance your English, this is definitely for teachers. Voice of America is an advanced level of English learning. Basically what it is news reports and current events and things that are happening in the States. Many people think that the TOEFL exam is an exam of grammar. It is not an exam of grammar. The TOEFL exam is a test to see if you can exist on a college campus. Many people think, oh my God, I got to, practice my grammar and my to-be verbs. No. Grammar is not even graded separately on the TOEFL exam. But can you hear a professor's lecture and respond to that professor? Do you know what is being discussed in the United States right now? What's the going topic? What is everyone talking about? You go on a college campus, that's what everyone's talking about. You need to join in on the conversation. So Voice of America is a site that has news stories, current events, the latest topic, for instance, climate control. Can English language learners write an essay on climate control? You get those kinds of practices from Voice of America. Okay, so last question. Okay, so I'll read it while everyone's logging on. Question number 3, the communicative approach. Communicative approach activities include all of the following except A, stories, plays, skits, and dramas. B, songs and karaoke. C, games. D, grammatical structures. Or E, poetry, speeches, and debates. Which
Remember,
one?
You're picking the one that's not.
The one that's not correct.
One that is not.
There we go. And let's take a look. Let's share the results and see what we have.
91% said that grammar structure is not part of the communicative approach.
Very
Yay!
good.
Ding,
They've
ding,
been
ding,
listening carefully.
Wonderful. Grammar is taught in context. It is not taught in isolation. It is part of the activities. Good job, everybody. Wonderful. Okay, we have a few more slides left, and then we're going to open it for questions. So I'd like for you to think about, as you're thinking about questions that you would like to ask me, and I don't know you, I can't see you, so be confident about what you ask because I can't use it against you. In using the communicative approach in the classroom, you as a teacher, what do you feel would be your strengths, your weaknesses, your challenges, and opportunities in implementing the communicative approach as a classroom instructional strategy in your English learning classroom?
A couple minutes of questions, and then we'll kind of wrap up, summarize, and look at what's coming up next month. Does that sound good?
I have a couple for you already. This one's
Okay.
been asked by a few people, and I've answered it, but I'd like you to answer it too. How do you get students to unfreeze so that they will talk more?
I can give an example. What I did is when, again, I go back to songs talking, we were doing a hip hop song. We did Uptown Funk and we did Rihanna. And the shy students who usually in the back were so excited about learning and to sing a hip hop song that they came forward and everyone was participating equally. And I think the thing is to increase student motivation is to engage the students in the process. What are they, I wonder if teachers actually ask their students, what do they want to learn?
So I think your answer is great, and it kind of goes in with what I typed in some of my responses was pick topics that they would want to talk about, something that's high interest. And then I also said lots of praise, encouragement, and positive rewards. So music is something that's universal and kids love it. So yeah, bringing in some songs is a great way to get them speaking.
Also call on those who don't dominate, and maybe not call on them so that they feel uncomfortable, but find ways of involving and engaging everyone, not just the dominant ones.
And I think using those active participation strategies where you put students in 2 lines and they have to speak to each other and rotate down the line and keep practicing speaking small dialogues or topics gets everyone up and comfortable because they're not singled out.
Elizabeth Palacios here in Lima, who works at IPNA, if it's the same one I'm thinking of.
Elizabeth.
Yeah, she has a question. She says, how can you engage students to be more aware of the need of using English at all times? It's not just in the classroom or not just when the teacher walks by.
And she said, especially when the previous teachers have only taught the grammar approach. So I think she's dealing with students that come from a grammar background. And now how do you convince them that they need to speak English?
I guess I'm kind of having a problem with the word convince students.
Well, she didn't use the word convince. She said, get them to see the need for more English speaking.
I don't know if you need to get them to see. I think you need to engage students more and approach their level of motivation. It's not an outside thing. When you say get the students to do, the students have to intrinsically want to. And the responsibility of the teacher is to give the students things that they're really interested in doing, that they want to engage in.
Okay, I think that is a good answer. And I think it all comes down, again, we can, get students to come to class, we can get them to listen, but how far can we get them to motivate? That's going to be something they, in the end, have to do on their own. Okay, I guess the last one we can bring up is what happens about all the students who are shy and timid. Teachers have talked about here in Peru, a lot of shy, timid students who are good students, but they don't want to speak, they don't want to participate. How do they get over that hump?
I'm hoping that this presentation changes, does the paradigm shift. Not to talk about the students' past. You need to know the students' past and what they have done and have not done, but think more about what is your responsibility to get students on board, to get students engaged, to get students motivated. You want to talk about the teacher's role? That is the teacher's role. The teacher's role is to engage the students. And so, okay, they come to you with many deficits, granted, but they're your student now.
Yeah, so that burden is on the teacher to bring that, to get that motivation going. And once it's started, it should take care of itself, or the students should have that motivation to continue, it sounds like.
Yeah, the motivation has to come within. The teacher can't make them do something. The teacher creates opportunities that students want to do something.
So create the want, create the opportunity. Very good.
Right.
Well, we are kind of running low on time here, so I thought we could kind of wrap things up. If you have any last words that you would like to leave, I know your information is here on the slides, I believe, as well, so people can contact you if they have any questions. So do you have any final words that you would like to share? Anything else you'd like to wrap up with?
The only thing I'd like to wrap up with is that communicative approach requires the teacher to really reflect on what their role and responsibility is as a teacher. It often requires a change in the values and beliefs about the teaching profession.
Yes.
And you have to be open, and as we say in the States, lifelong learner. You'll be learning something new, but you and your students will benefit from it.
Excellent. I think that's an excellent way to finish. And I believe we have just a couple more slides to talk about RELO Andy's webinars and also who's coming up next month. So for all of you folks who are listening in, this is our information. By the way, we have a RELO Andy's webinar on Facebook. We have the YouTube page, so you can listen to this, which will be uploaded soon. And you can also listen to past webinars going back, I think, 2 or 3 years. And the last one for next month. Yes, we have Wendy Catalan, who is in, I believe she's also in Colombia. So we have 2 Colombias in a row. And she is going to be doing reading and writing for young learners. We might see some overlap here. Hopefully, this can build on what you've been talking about this week, Talibah. And we'll do this next month. May 23rd is the date at the moment. We'll be sending out the invitations. It'll be the same time, 3 o'clock, 1500 Lima time. So I guess we can wrap up for this week. And Talibah, thank you so much. I know you're traveling, you're very busy, you're in a different country, you're doing all these things, but thank you for taking the time and sharing all this wisdom with everybody.
It's a pleasure, and sorry for the technical problems, but next time.
No, it all comes out. You have all the information, and we had so many questions, we can't even get to all of them. And I know folks will want to kind of look this over again and hopefully be in touch again soon. So thank you very much. We're going to wrap up for this month. Okay.
Thank you very much.
Okay, very much. Very good.
Good night,
Thank you, everyone.
everybody.
And we'll talk to you next time.
Buenas tardes.
Bye.